You're listening to Central Illinois Business. Alex Ruggieri here. Hey, thanks for joining us today. In the studio, Mary Shores. She is the owner, CEO, and president of Midstate Collections and Solutions, a company which she started when she was just 24. And a avid teacher of leadership. We're going to be talking about that today. And she embraces the concept of what she calls delusional ambition. Welcome.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for the wonderful introduction.
Yes, absolutely. I love that, delusional ambition. And I said before we went on air, of course you mean that in a positive and constructive way.
And a crazy way.
In a crazy way, that's right. Well, we're here to talk about leadership, and I know you do presentations, and I know that you've had to be a leader because of your work as an owner and entrepreneur of your own business. What are some of the things that we should be thinking about when it comes to leadership skills?
I like to start with thinking about how to drive your influence by sharing meaning and empowering others.
Okay.
And that sounds really big and broad.
Mm-hmm.
So as we move forward, we'll break it down into what that actually looks like.
Okay.
But if we can share our meaning,
okay,
that starts with sharing the reasons why you do what you do. So I'd like to ask you, Alex, why do you do this radio show?
Okay, why? That's really good. What is your why? I think that's really an important thing to answer. For me, I have a passion for people. I have a passion for business. And I have a passion for story. All of those things. And you may or may not know this, but I mean, they did not pay me to do this radio show. I do this purely as a passion. And it's kind of like if you find something that you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life. I love people and the stories that, you know, the struggles, the setbacks and the triumphs. And I think everybody out there sometimes thinks, you know, they see all these successful people and they say, oh, they're so successful and I could never be that way. They might change their minds if they understood that this successful person had several downturns, that this successful person had to struggle to get, you know, over obstacles, and that they were, maybe they had to believe in themselves or something to get them through. And if they hear those stories, it could encourage them. And so I like the idea that this show encourages people by sharing the stories of other people. I don't know, that's a big long answer, but there's a lot of whys. It's the people, it's the stories, and it's the whole idea of business. I think that business, was it Harry Truman? No, it was Teddy Roosevelt who said, the business of America is business. And I think that the more businesses and the more unique businesses and the more diverse businesses that we have in our economy, the stronger our nation is. So all of those things really juice me up.
That's a pretty compelling answer.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes.
I love it.
I haven't thought about that till you asked, but I mean, you know, that's what it is.
So I know that all leaders are going to get results. Results are that outcome of the influence that the leader has on their group or their staff or their team, you know, whatever their structure may be. Now, some leaders will get results, but they'll destroy people in the process. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
So they get the results, but they're doing it in a way that is tearing down their staff, their team. There's low morale, high turnover, a lot of uncertainty. People just feel uncertain, and those results are going to be inconsistent. This leadership style eventually drives disconnection. On the other hand, there are plenty of really nice people who get poor results, but they lose their influence. So, you know, we think, do we want to be the nice guy or the nice leader, but we don't get the results? Or do we want to be that driven, you know, hard leader that gets results but tears people up in the process? And so what I think is exciting is to show how you can drive your influence by sharing meaning and empowering others by creating a thriving environment using practical policies and procedures. So what I'm putting out there is you don't have to be either one of those leaders. You can be a straight up leader. You can share your reasons why. Like you just said, recent research is showing that people will work with blood, sweat, and tears if you give them the reason why.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Something
They become raving fans
That's right.
You know, I mean, it's just like if you had somebody like, it would be an example. I can't think of a great one.
I have an example.
Okay, good.
So I was recently at a conference, and the keynote speaker was, I believe his name was Ken Schmidt, the CEO of Harley Davidson.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things he was talking about with Harley Davidson is that they don't have customers, they have disciples.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a pretty powerful statement.
Yep.
And that Harley Davidson just embodies this lifestyle.
Well,
so
Apple computers,
Apple is
another
great example.
Right.
You know, they don't just build computers. They wanted to change the world with respect to
arts and creativity and all of that.
And they are a wonderful example of starting with the reason why. As a matter of fact, in Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, he highlights the Apple story quite a bit in that book.
Oh, really interesting.
Yes. And so especially the reason why needs to be something other than the bottom line. Mm-hmm. So even in my company, I do collections, and I share with my staff a very simple idea that the reason why we do what we do is because we want people to feel good about paying their debt.
I love it.
And
I love the positive, constructive approach you take to that business.
It's been rewarding to do it that way.
Yeah.
And having a debt is a burden to people, and so what we can do to help them relieve that burden is find that solution for them. So I think that your reasons why can change over time too, and that's
they evolve just like people.
They evolve over time. So my reasons in 1998 are different than they are now in almost 15.
Yep.
And so you want to use empowerment to do that. And empowerment isn't about being perfect or. And I look at the actual definition of empowerment, it's very overwhelming. It's a management practice of sharing information, rewards, and power with employees so they can take initiative and make decisions to solve problems and improve service and performance. And it actually goes on further than that, but to me that's a very overwhelming definition. And we might be thinking, if we're a leader, I don't have that kind of time. I don't have resources to do that. I don't have the energy or experience. And I'm here to say, you don't have to. It's very simple about just having some empowerment. So after we think about the reasons why, I think the next important part of that is to think about your employees or your team members and instilling in them a knowing of what they are in control of. And what they are in control of is those job tasks or duties that are their responsibility that they know inside, outside, backwards, and forwards. So I'm sure you can think of a person here who knows how to do something inside, outside, backwards, and forwards.
That would be Ed Bond.
And so he's in control of doing that, and that's a very empowering feeling. Now, when I think about this in my office, I have a lot of clerical staff, data entry, people who answer the phone. I have legal staff.
Right.
And with each one of them, I want them to know 3 aspects of their job that they are completely in control of. And even at a very entry-level person, these things can be things like following their work instruction, how accurate they are in their procedures, or how well they do on the telephone. So if it's their job, what are the things they are in control of? And if you can do that with your employees, they will feel empowered, and they will come to you less to solve problems because they will feel that, yes, I have this. That's what you want, is for them inside to feel like they have this under control so that they don't have to ask the same questions.
Well, and see, people want to make positive contributions.
Yes.
And a lot of times they're set up for failure because they're given a lot of responsibility but no authority. And there's a conflict built into that. If you're going to give them responsibility, then give them the authority to fulfill that responsibility, whatever it is. And set them up for and also make sure that the metrics are clear. In other words, how do you measure whether they're successful or not? In other words, did you make 10 calls today? Well, that's pretty easy. If you made 10, you fulfilled your responsibility. And if you made only 5, we might need to talk, But they can feel good, if they say, man, I made my 10 calls today, or whatever it is, their responsibility is. I contacted 10 clients, or whatever it is. I processed 20 files, whatever it is. They can feel good about that because it's been clearly defined and it's measurable,
Mm-hmm.
and they can know that they're doing their job right.
And you picked up on a really great example with even if we just talk about the phone call example. If your expectation as the leader was that someone was to make 10 calls and they only made 5, and you do a root cause analysis to discover the reason why, well, if they don't feel confident in making that call, then there's going to be hesitation.
Right.
And so here again lies the empowerment that when they understand inside, outside, backwards, and forwards how to handle those calls, then they're more likely to meet your requirement because they're not held back. If somebody can't make 10 calls and they only make 5, there's a reason why.
Yeah.
And
Well, I always say that confidence is built upon competence, and competence is built on knowledge. So if you train people properly, they become competent. Once they are competent, their confidence meter goes off the charts because they know what they're doing, and they know, and that gives them a lot of confidence. Anyway, we have got to take a brief break for our sponsor's sake, but this is great stuff. So I don't want to stop you. We're just going to take a brief break. When we come back, we'll talk some more about leadership. Can we do that?
Absolutely.
Okay, please don't go away. We'll be right back after a brief word from our sponsor. And we're back. You're listening to Central Illinois Business. Alex Ruggieri here, and we've been having a great conversation with Mary Shore. She is the owner, CEO, and president of Mid-State Collections and Solutions. We've been talking about leadership today and all of the different aspects of, you started out talking about leadership styles and how some people actually get results, but they demoralize everybody because they're so mean and cruel of the way they go about it. And other people are really super nice, and but they just don't get it. Like the Wizard of Oz, he was a terribly nice guy, he just couldn't get anything done, and everything and every shade in between those two leadership styles. And then we talked a little bit about empowering the employee, and we talked about competence and confidence and all of that. So from that, where we left at the break, I'd like you to pick up again.
Well, you were actually right in the right spot because you mentioned right before the break the training aspect and how important that is. And so that's really the third step in my process here is to make sure that you have policies and procedures that are documented and well trained on. So, for example, in my office, everything has a work instruction, and that is simply a set of keystroke by keystroke or step-by-step instructions on every task. And to go along with that, it's really complementary to have a checklist. So for certain procedures in the office that are lengthy, we'll have a checklist so that we have checks and balances to make sure that everything was done properly. And there's a huge cost, I believe, of not having work instructions. So to the listening audience, I pose this question. Have you ever had someone working for you for a very long time and then all of a sudden they leave?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you figure out really quickly how dependent you truly were on that person. And what if you try to replace them and no one seems to be able to fill the role that the previous person did? I think that the reason why this happens is because perhaps the person in the role was there for 10 plus years and she knew or he knew how to do everything by memory. And then when the new person comes in, there's no work instructions or documentation and therefore no way to train this new person. They just have to figure it out on their own. Mm-hmm. Well, this leads to trouble.
Loss of productivity,
loss of confidence. They don't feel confident, and they may be embarrassed. They may feel like you as a leader expect them to know how to do these things, and they don't really feel comfortable coming to you because they don't want to be frowned upon that they couldn't do it. So if you have everything in a work instruction, it makes it so much easier. In my office, when I've had people relocate or had to replace a position, I've actually found that transition to be very easy because we have things documented so clearly on the work
Well,
instructions.
that's an enlightened approach. And the other thing too is, and you can't always do this, but the aspect of cross-training people. So everybody knows a little bit about the other person's job. Now, you're not going to be as good as your job as you are, okay, right? But at least if you know some aspects of it and how it works and this, that, and the other thing, if you're out sick for a week because you got the flu, there's somebody there that basically understands the process that you bring to the table. And if you have to, and somebody leaves and somebody comes back, it's so much easier. You got the work papers, you've got the workbook or whatever, the instructions, and somebody else in the office who was cross-trained to kind of guide them along. It's just a way, way smoother transition.
That's correct. And it's also wonderful for diagnosis of things. So, for example, in our office, if we had an issue come up last year, and it was a costly issue. So there was a glitch in something, and we couldn't figure it out for quite a long time. And when we did the root cause analysis, we discovered that the work instruction wasn't being followed. And so as you do these analysis to determine a solution to a problem, what you might find is that there's a human error, meaning the person wasn't following the direction correctly, that it's a training error, that the person wasn't trained correctly, or that the work instruction itself had some sort of error on it. But the amount of time it takes to diagnose those things is greatly reduced because you have everything on paper. You don't have to start from the beginning.
Yeah.
You have it there. You just can follow the procedure and say, was this done? Was that done?
Right. Well, what's interesting, too, is if you have to do a diagnostic and you don't have the instructions, your chances of finding the mistake are very, very slim. It's like if you're sitting down and you're adding on a calculator, okay, and you get the wrong answer and you had to add all that string of numbers, you're going to have to go back and almost keystroke by keystroke work through that. Whereas if you had a calculator that had a tape on it and you could see line by line what you had, you look, oh darn, here three lines down I made the wrong keystroke. And that's like having your workbook. You can go through and say, oh my goodness, they weren't following the work procedure program. If you don't have that, you got to go back and try to add everything up again, and that's very difficult.
That's exactly right. I actually brought with me an example of a work instruction. I know the listeners can't see it, but you can see that they can be very detailed. I've brought you a checklist as well, which is a real example from our office. This also makes it easier for people to accept, because sometimes if you don't have documentation, a person who made the error could easily say, no, I was told to do it this way. But if you have it documented, then it's easier to have those conversations because it is in black and white.
Wow, this is fantastic. Yeah, it's great. And right, who is responsible? What system is used? What is the scope? Description? Fantastic stuff.
So in thinking about writing work instructions, you've just listed off some examples, but you want to cover all the details of it. Mm-hmm. And so what systems are going to be used, what equipment. Is
this something that you just came up with, or is this some system that you've implemented, or where did you get all this stuff?
We need to know the story.
Yes, I'm interested.
Okay.
We've got about 5 minutes left, so you take your time, tell the story.
Well, when I was first running my business, I didn't have the kind of experience that it took to run a business, and I very easily became the typical control freak small business owner. And if someone would ask me, maybe someone would come to me and have a question, and I think this is something a lot of small business owners do, is they just say, here, give it to me and I'll do it. Mm-hmm. So instead of taking the time, we just feel like, it's just quicker for me to do it myself, then I know it's done correctly. And it got to the point where I was exhausting my efforts all over the place, and I realized that my company wasn't going to grow if I was the person running around.
They call that the entrepreneurial bottleneck.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know it had a term.
Yeah.
So I was in that bottleneck.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just started with something, we used to call it the Red Book, which was just a red binder in my office, an old-fashioned 3-ring binder. And I started with 10 work instructions, which were just the 10 most common jobs in the office. These were things like processing mail returns, doing data entry, processing some return checks, managing the return check file, which is those check machines at the store, that type of jobs that were very routine. And we started there, and it worked really, really well. Now today, we have an entire management system based on this philosophy. And I can't actually even imagine running my office without it, because it's given me the freedom.
So you built that from the ground up then?
Yes, I did.
Wow.
And I wouldn't be able to have the time to be sitting here with you today if I didn't have those work instructions. And one of the things that, the reason why I've decided that I want to start sharing this information is because I actually work with a lot of small businesses. So my clients are the local landlords, the local heating and air people, the local doctor's office. These are all my clients. And what I find is them struggling with those things that I struggled with many years ago. And so I'm really fortunate to have opportunities to get this out, because my ultimate goal is to help those small businesses be more successful by just putting in some very practical things. The last time I gave a speech on this, one of the big questions was, how did the employees take this? So would there be some resistance? And what I find is that as you bring new employees in, they will love having the documented work instructions.
Oh, I'll bet.
Love it, love it, love it, because they are going to start off right off the bat ready
Knowing
to go.
what to do.
Knowing what to do, knowing what's expected of them, knowing who they need to report it to, having all the information. Now, it can be overwhelming, though, for the current employees. So what we want to do is, if you want to get started with this, a great way to do it is just give people the opportunity, find out who would like the opportunity to write out some of the work instructions, and just have them do maybe one or two a week, because
Yes.
you want to.
You don't want it to be overwhelming.
You don't want it to be overwhelming, and you want to be able to give them a chance to make this an opportunity for themselves. They're pioneering something new. And then from there, they can just simply give it to another employee that doesn't do that job. And if that employee can follow the task, then you have a successful work instruction.
Yeah, that's a great acid test, isn't it?
Yes.
I drew a picture of my grandson the other day and colored it. I just, it's just colored pencil. And I was so proud of it, as I thought, oh, this is Isaac. It really looks like him. I showed it to my wife. She goes, yeah, that looks like Isaac. Everybody else I showed it to, like, who is that? Who is that? And I'm like, I guess it doesn't look as much like Isaac as I thought. Well, if you have to give those work instructions to another employee and they can't figure out what you at some point you need to tweak that so that it's kind of like the idiot test. Anybody could figure out what it said.
Mm-hmm. And a great compliment to that is to have the checklist. And so just to sum up, I'm glad that we could share the importance of reasons why you do what you do, provide some information on practical work instructions, and your result can be a great culture of empowerment.
Well, I just think it's so much fun to talk about this kind of thing. People, I believe, need to work on their leadership skills, and it doesn't matter if you're the boss or not. Even if you're working within the company, you could still be a leader. You can lead your group, you can lead your team, you can take leadership steps, and all of this information, if you do that, it's valid, because when you take leadership upon yourself and not have it, somebody impose you, if you just do it on yourself and your own, people recognize that. And if you're at the university, you get promoted. If you're in a corporation, you're going to get promoted. If you're in your own business, your clients are going to love you. And so we need to take leadership serious, whether we're working in the company or whether we're running it.
And I'd like to also add, if anyone's interested in more information, I'm going to be doing a 2-part series through I think it's the Small Business Economic Development. Mm-hmm. And you could contact Carly. I'll be doing a 2-part series in the spring of 2015.
Fantastic. We have been talking with Mary Shores. She is the owner, CEO, and president of Mid-State Collections and Solutions. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Alex.
Please don't go away. Much, much more in the second half of the hour, right after a brief word from our sponsor.